We are just beginning to understand the impact of trauma on individuals and by extension on their marriages. So you've mentioned already that, most couples tend to seek therapy and counselling, on average, maybe 6 years after it should have been done. So could you speak on the role of therapy in addressing trauma, premarital issues, infidelity, marital challenges, and how this would impact divorce cases? So just speak about the importance of going to therapy in some of these situations.
I think most forms of therapy are trying to handle people who have gone through trauma. Sometimes it's actually secondary trauma. It's what's affecting somebody else that is affecting you. So it may be what's going on with my mom or with my father or with my sister or with my significant other person that's affecting how I view things, how I handle my responsibilities. And we've got various words, usually as simple as stress, that is generally more temporary, depression that usually goes on and it can get psychotic. And they've got hundreds of mental challenges that result. And as I said earlier, sometimes the trauma or psychological illnesses, if we use that, in other words, whatever goes from the norm, can be more difficult to handle than physical injuries that you can clearly see. You can see what's happening to the wound and how it's healing. The psychological injuries are sometimes much deeper. In all of these, there are experts, there are people, sometimes because in this community, we are transiting from extended families to nuclear families. Generally, the existence of an extended family ensured that everybody had a responsibility that made it more difficult for people to go through or into depression. There was usually somebody in the family that was close to help. But as we become lonelier, in spite of social media, we do need more professional help than just what was usually available from the network within the family. And so we do need people who are psychologists and psychotherapists and psychiatrists and people who are professionals in giving that type of assistance. We have very few of them graduating in our universities relative to the size of our population, just as we don't do a good job when it comes to psychiatry or mental problems. I think it's in gynecology that, again, in every area, we have insufficient professionals. Definitely people will go through traumatic experiences and respond very differently. Some go through traumas and come out stronger, so they experience post-traumatic growth. This may be trauma at war. We find it in soldiers. It may be within the family. Somebody comes from a very abusive home, but is very, very balanced. Some, however, for various reasons, are not able to survive. They need help. They need that tawaso bil sabr, tawaso bil haq, tawaso bil marhama. They need support from others. And we all do in one case or stage or the other. If it's not when you are younger, you would probably need it when you are older. You just never know. So I think people who are going through difficulties or see others going through difficulties, just as if you see somebody having a physical injury or having a physical ailment or disease, you would recommend they see an expert. That's definitely very encouraged. It is not a sign of lack of faith, or, to seek advice, to seek counseling. People went to the Prophet ﷺ, went to others for various types of challenges that they had. and we should not stigmatize. It's very, very insensitive to make people feel bad that they are asking for some form of therapy. If people get worse, unfortunately, the standard approach of our people is to say they are being possessed by jinn and now need some form of exorcism. And a lot of that is ill-informed, at least from what I have seen and read. Cases that need a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist, you find people insisting on dua, with no basis for treating mental illnesses with du'as only. We do du'as for anybody who is sick, for anybody in hospital. But to say du'a and ruqya is going to be understood as some form of exorcism without the need to also consult medical personnel, I think is very, very contrary to Sharia, contrary to the guidance of the Quran on ask those who know if you don't. And especially when it is done by people who have no certification, nothing to show that they have cure other than just placebo effects and psychosomatic forms of healing. In other words, nothing that actually has a therapeutic value. So there are many causes, many sources of trauma that could lead people into depression and mental illness. And definitely, as soon as we see anybody around us having that, the need to see how to help you. The moment you see something wrong, you should try and correct it with your hand, with your tongue, give counseling, connect them with people who know what to do. Of course, unfortunately, we have very few people with these expertise, but we're getting more and more of them in the general hospitals and in certain professional clinics. So definitely counseling and therapy is very, very important. And I think it's going to become more and more important as we move into the future. Just looking at other societies that have been getting more addicted to technology, seeing depression starting in children in many of these communities. And it's not just social media. Some it's genetic, some it's hormone imbalances, some it's reaction to various things. And sometimes it's reaction to the kind of families they have that stress them out. So definitely the need for experts here. Allahu Alam.
Jazakallah khair.